name's Steve Cristiano, and I'm with Gadget Media. Today we're going to take a look at the X32 and how to send signals out to a DAW and then back in so that you can use extra processing like Waves or Plugin Alliance or any plugins that you might have over there that you like. All right? So it's really two parts. First part is the console and how do we get the signals to go out and back in again. So let's look at that first. So the first thing we're going to do is come over here to the routing page, like that. And if we use our arrow keys and go over here to inputs, these are the sources that are coming into each channel. Okay? So we're just going to focus on a couple of channels today because it would be the same no matter how many you want to use. So the first 8 channels on this console right now are pulling from Digital Snake on AES50A, channel 1 through 8. They're backstage. They have a bunch of wireless units and stuff plugged into them. On most people, if you're not using a Digital Snake, this will be set to local 1 through 8, which are all of the plugs on the back of the unit. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we need to know what channels we're going to be using so that we can figure out where that source is coming from. So if we look at the regular channels here, today we're going to be using this channel 5, which is just a wireless mic here for testing. So if we look on it right now, this is channel 5, and it has a little A right there, which on my console means it's coming from AES50A. Yours will probably not have that if you're getting your signals from the local inputs. Okay, so now that we know where we're getting our signal from, we have to send that source out to the computer. Okay, so the easy way to do this, because I may not want to do all of these, okay, I could come down here and just say, take all of your inputs from the card, but I don't want to do that because some of these I'll want to go out and some of those I don't. So instead, we're going to use the user ins and outs because that allows us to make one-to-one changes to whatever we want individually. So if we use our arrow keys and go across our tabs to user out, we can see that we've got a bunch of options there. So one thing I forgot, I'm sorry, we'll go back over to our inputs. And now our channel 1 through 8 on the console, instead of coming from here, we're going to scroll down and have it come from not card. Card would be the USBs. We're going to take user in 1 through 8. Okay, so now when we go over to our user section, right there, and we see we're on inputs. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are now the first 8 channels on the console. Number 5 is the one that I'm using right now. It'll come down to in 5, and instead of being AES50, I'm going to have it come from card 5. Okay, so when the computer's done and it sends it out over USB, which is the card, it'll now come directly in here. Now we need to send that signal out. So still in user outs, we're going to go to output by pressing that, and then out number 5 is going to be AES55. Okay, so we can see that that's how it's selected right now. So this is the sound source for that channel. This is where that channel was getting its sound. If you were plugging directly in the back, that would say you'd go to local in and choose, you know, whatever hole you're plugged into there. Okay. So now it's really easy to get lost doing this, so take your time, think it through. So now we have the original source going out on USB 5, and then we have whatever's coming back from USB 5 going into the channel 5 on the console. So now let's look at what we have to do on the computer. So what I'm using right here, this is Studio One version 5. And this one is really nice because not only is it a great DAW, really easy to use, it has a new function called Show. And Show allows you to do things in real time for when you're actually playing out live. It allows you to use tracks and things that you've created or other tracks as backing tracks, or you can process live inputs like we're going to do here. You can also use it for virtual instruments. So if you have a keyboard and you want some better sounds, you can use it to do that all at the same time. In addition, however you have it set up, you can have it set up for multiple songs. So as you go to the next song, it'll change everything instantly for you. But let's just look at one thing right now here. So in the players column, we're going to click plus, and it's asking me what kind of player do I want. We're going to use, this one says aux, it says real instrument. So this is a live input, that's what that means. And we can name it, and I'll just call it vocal. And we'll call it vocal 5 since it's 5 on the console. I only need one of them. I am going to turn off this preset. On Studio One, there are a bunch of preset combinations of effects and EQs and all kinds of things already made for you that you could choose for that. For us right now, we're just going to go no preset. So it's asking me, where do I want to take the signal from? I want it from USB 5, because that's where I sent it on the X32. And I'm going to return it to sub 5. Now, in the setup for Studio One, I told it sub 5 goes out USB 5. We can show you how that's configured a little later. But this sets the whole thing up like this. So there we go. And now we're seeing this here. We can see our input's 5 and our output is sub 5. If we want to see more information, we can come down to the bottom here where it says mix, and it'll open a little bit more of a traditional mixer window. Now let's see if we're actually getting some signal in there. Hey, 1, 2, 2. So you can see that my voice, I'm talking on the wireless mic, and it's coming into the console, it's coming out here, we can see our input level, and then it's returning back to the console, and you can probably hear it coming through the PA. Now, just to prove that that's happening, if I mute this here, it stops the signal from coming. You're not going to get anything. If I unmute it in the computer, well, there it's back. So now anything that I do to this here is going to come out live. So there's a couple of ways to add effects in Studio One. You can insert it here, so I can hit this little plus and then use whatever you want. So if I wanted to put a like an SSL compressor, I have one from Waves, and there's also a whole nother channel there. Let's see, I gotta find it. Waves. So I have a bunch of things that I'm using from Waves. One of them, by the way, is this really cool Epic plugin for effects made by Chris Lord-Alge, and it's called Epic, oddly enough. So I want the mono one. So now it's going to open that up, and now it should be processing. You can actually hear a little bit of slapback echo. It's set as a 30% mix. I'll just crank this up so you can hear it a little better. Hey, 1, 2, 2. So now it's processing through this effect. And you go ahead and set it up however you want. Now, normally for a vocal, I probably wouldn't do a reverb as an insert. I would do it as a send effect, just like in the console, just like you guys are used to analog consoles. So let me take this out. Come down here, right click on it. Go to, grab my glasses. There's remove. Okay, so it's no longer in the signal path. So instead, I want to send it to an effect and then return it. Okay. So there are sends on here as well. I'll click plus, add an effects channel. It built me in a channel and already sent a certain amount to it. We'll put that effect in here. Epic mono. Okay, so that is set into that effects bus. Because it's on an effects bus, I will make this 100%. So one thing that we're not hearing is any effect. This send is sending it to here. We can see the input level and output level. But the return of this, you can see, is set to main. We don't want that. We want it set back to the same subgroup here, which will output it through the same USB channel. And there it is. So we have it now. And we have individual control over that effect here. Just makes it a little easier to blend it the way you want it. And so you could do this with as many channels as you like and whatever kind of effects you like. And then you save that as a song, and then you can move on and continue to change them up to be whatever you want. And as you move from song to song, it'll change for you.
And a good thing about the personas is that it preloads all the effects, so that when you go from song to song, you're not waiting for these plugins to spin up. They're going to be there. And so could you real quick go to the sound card setup where you put the channels in, just so that they know that it's a one-to-one. So if you have In this case, we're only using 16 inputs, and you got 16 outputs, and they're all mapped the same way. Whatever DAW you're using, that's what you're going to want to do. I mean, I don't know if we want to take the time to show them that, but that's all.
Yeah, I'll show you where it is here in Studio One. It may be different. It probably will be different in your DAW, your DAW. But we'll give it a shot. So here we're going to go back to our start page. This is the page that you come up with when you first start up Studio One, where you can choose projects that you're working on, etc. Down here is where you choose what audio interface you want to use. I'm using XUSB. That's the name of the USB card that's in the X32. We pop that open. You can see that my input and output device are set to that. And then
the other thing while you're here is look at the device block rate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So you want to be able to mess around with that so that you're not, to reduce latency is to play with that sample rate so that you're getting the effects process that you want, but you're not creating so much latency on it that you're getting a lot of delay, too much delay.
Yeah. Latency is just the amount of time it takes to process and return the signal. There's always going to be a little bit. The question is, will you hear it or not? Because they can be in the millisecond range where you'll never actually hear it.
Right.
So this is how many samples it takes for this thing to process something. And you can change that. So just like with anything, tech related, it's a balance. The smaller the number of samples, the lower the latency, the less you hear it, but the more horsepower it takes from your computer. So if you've got a computer with a decent amount of horsepower, you can lower this, down to ridiculously slow rates. Now, if it starts hanging up or making clicking or weird noises, then you're going to need to increase it.
Right.
This was just the standard amount that's on here. I haven't had a chance to play with what's optimum for this laptop yet. But yeah, that's a really good point. Also, I'm using the sample rate that the X32 is using. So most of them are set to either 44.1 or 48. I'm using 48, which, by the way, is a better thing to use for digital video.
So if you were streaming this, you'd want to be at 48.
You might want to be at 48, especially if you're feeding the sound digitally into your streaming streaming software. So the setup that we're talking about, come down here to Show Setup and click it, and now I have a set of inputs and outputs. So what this is saying is for my inputs that are available to me in Studio One, which USB input do I want to take it from? So by 1-to-1, we're meaning I'm using input 1 from USB 1, input 2 or track 2 from USB 2, etc., etc. And then for the output part, this is where the magic is. I've created all these subgroups, or subs they call them, and each one of those is fed to a specific USB output. So sub 1 feeds to USB 1, sub 2 feeds to USB 2, etc., etc. So that when we're in the software, when we're in the mix portion, we can tell it, or in the show portion, we can tell it, come in on USB whatever, and we know that that's going to be the same channel number. And we can tell it, go out sub whatever, and then that's going to be the same USB number. It just makes it a little easier to finish the routing on the console.